the Rangers Journal now.
Good evening. This is your Thursday night edition of the Rangers Journal. Tonight we're going to be talking about our European expectations for the coming season, really talking about who we can get in the qualifiers and what we think is going to happen, what we deem as acceptable, and we'll go from there. As always, pleasure to be hosting tonight. In the comments, please put your thoughts in there and get involved, and we'll pick up some comments and comment on them. And got a couple of guys with us tonight. So I'd like to say, first of all, evening, Gary. How are you tonight?
I'm good, thanks. Good. Start of a long weekend, so looking forward to a few days off.
Hopefully we get a bit of weather. Hopefully we get a bit of weather this weekend. We've also got Scotty down there in the corner. How are you tonight, mate?
Aye, not bad at all, Thommo. Not bad at all. Quite happy to be sitting down here in the corner tonight. It's a wee change for me. Hope you're well, mate.
Bit of pressure off you. That's good.
Aye.
And we've got Stevie as well. How are you? How are you, Stevie? Keeping well?
I'm good, mate. Thank you. Good evening, everybody. Good to be here.
Excellent. So we'll crack right on to it. As I say, we're going to be talking about our upcoming European games, which get underway in less than a month. We go into the Champions League qualifiers in the third round. If we win that, then we go into a playoff round. In the third round, the teams we can get are FC 20 from Holland, Union Saint-Gilloise, I think I've said that right, from Belgium, who we've got history with a couple of years ago when we beat them over 2 legs. And there's a couple of games to be played: Lugano against Fenerbahce and Dinamo Kiev against Partizan of Serbia. So any one of those 6 teams we could draw in the third qualifying round. I'll come to you first, Gary. What do you think of the quality of those teams, and are they teams that you think we should be beating, or what are your thoughts on them?
I've done a lot of research earlier on. I was having a look at the UEFA coefficient, and we are ranked way above most of those other teams, I think 25th or whatever it may be. So arguably, on paper, which sadly it's not played on, we should be the best team in the qualifying. I think for all of this qualifying round, we should be comparable, if not better, than the ones we've come up against, depending how the team settles, depending how they bed in, any new players, etc., and obviously playing a different venue. So that should be one that we've got a 60-40, 70-30 chance of going through. Then it becomes about the next one.
Yeah. And Stevie, sort of same question to you, but also we're going to be a very changed side from obviously last season. Hopefully we might have new people in the door. What's your thoughts on those teams, and do you think that these qualifiers, do you think they come a bit early, or are you happy with where they are?
I mean, it's been this way for so long. We're used to these games at this time of year. I think it's kind of standard now, whether we like it or not. This is what happens. The teams that we can go up against, I think it's pretty strong. I think the Belgian team that you pronounced really well, which I'm not going to try and pronounce, but we'll call them Union. They're the best draw. I would like to play Fenerbahce because I've got Mourinho. They've got a lot of money. They're investing. I've just read earlier they're trying to sign. Remember the boy at Newcastle? Was it Alan St. Maximin? Class player. They're going after guys. They're going after like real pedigree. So I expect Fenerbahce to come through that tie with the Swiss side. Tough draw for them because the Swiss team have actually, I think they've already played like 14 games. Their domestic season's well underway, so they might actually pull a surprise. But Fenerbahce good, Swiss team probably decent. 20, they finished third in the Dutch league last season, so they've obviously got a decent bit about them. It was at Partizan was the other possibility. So yeah, all pretty difficult games, I think. So yeah, for me, if we get the Belgian one, that would be a good draw. As you say, new team, few new young players, but still obviously a lot of players to go out. So yeah, it's a big ask. My expectations are certainly lowered than maybe in previous seasons.
Same question, really, Scotty. What's your thought on those teams? I mean, Fenerbahce, I think, became second in the Turkish league with. I can't remember if they actually got over 100 points or they were very close to it. I think Galatasaray had to really, pull it out of the bag to get across the line. So as Stevie said, that would probably, to me, be the hardest tie. But what's your thinking on those teams?
Fenerbahce is probably the one you want to avoid. I would agree with Stevie when he says about Alan St. Maximin coming on to play for them. He's signing for Saudi, I think, so he's not going to be cheap. He's going to be on a couple of £100,000 at least anyway, which shows Fenerbahce are willing to spend the money to get to where they want to be. They've got a top class manager, one of the potentially, you could argue, one of the greatest of all time, managing them now. So I would say I would be content with getting through the first round because I think that guarantees you the £5 million, doesn't it? And then after that, it's a playoff, and anything can really go in a playoff. I think that's probably my minimum expectation, is negotiating that first tie. A Belgian outfit came across them a few years ago. Their name mugs, FC20. Don't know if you remember. Do you remember when we played? Was it FC Willem from Holland? And we absolutely spanked them. There's no other way about it. We beat them quite comfortably, but then since we've had teams like PSV and Ajax, and we've had a bit of a spanking myself. So Dutch teams are a bit of an unknown quantity for us, but I would fancy us against the Belgian team or a Dutch team, Thommo.
Yeah, and either way, I mean, if we get beat in the third qualifying round or the playoff round, we drop into the Europa League properly. So we've got guaranteed European football. Gary, what would your expectations be in the qualifying rounds and Europe in general? What's your expectations?
I suppose I'm always slightly more optimistic than maybe Stevie was there. I think, we've competed against comparable, if not better teams than all those teams we've faced against. And that's the thing, our European record is good, and that's what you hang your hat on some degree. We have, as 100% Fenerbahce look like a good signed paper, but would they be any better than Betis? Would they be any better than some of the other teams we've faced over the last couple of years? So probably not. So on our day, I certainly have no doubts, provided the players we bring in gel, provided the players that we bring in aren't all injured within the first week, and provided that we actually have a chance to kind of develop some sort of cohesion that we can compete against the 4 or 6 teams we can compete against. So I think on that basis, I'd be confident that we can get by. Certainly, as Scott says, 20 should be one that we're able to negotiate. USG, I'll go USG, never mind Union. I was at Ibrox. We trounced them at Ibrox, if I remember rightly. I think it was 3-0 going on many more that game. And they were a good side. I think they reached the quarterfinals of the Europa League the following year, if I remember rightly. So they weren't a bad side, but we were better than them. And I think the other two, that Dynamo Kiev is one of the options, I think, and a few others around there. So I'd be looking to buy the first one, and then it's really a lottery, isn't it? We look at all these permutations about who might get through. Is it going to be Lille? Is it going to be Slavia Prague, etc., etc.? We don't know who's going to be in the playoff draw. It's really just a matter of get through one at a time, see where we're at, and then make a decision around how what the likelihood of winning is.
I like Gaz's optimism there, but also the buzzword for the night is variables. After that statement earlier, there's so many variables, as you've said, and to me, Ibrox is such a big part of your European success the last few years. Football's all about the finest margins, and we're losing a big margin, not having that stadium ready. And we don't like Hampden's not a patch on Ibrox, the atmosphere, whatever. Our fans will still make a racket, but it's not going to be the same. These teams come to like Ibrox and we're terrified. It's almost worth a goal, the atmosphere and the kind of everything about it. So we need to factor that in as well. But hopefully, guys is right.
Yeah, I mean, how big of a factor do you think it is, Stevie? Obviously, not having Ibrox there. What's your thoughts on that?
Time will tell me, but I think 30% maybe. It's just like I say, it's worth a goal like the way our stadium rocks, and it just intimidates people. I think it helps with officials as well. You sometimes get better decisions going your way in these games. We just have to wait and see. Like I don't know about yourselves, but sometimes at Hampden, I feel like the atmosphere kind of gets sucked at the stadium. You know, it's no close enough to the pitch. I'm not doubting our fans for 1 second, but you know, it's not our bread and butter. It's not our normal environment for like these games. So, to be honest, I would have preferred Murrayfield. I know that's not like practical because it's 50 miles away. But Murrayfield would have had a better atmosphere. I remember Hearts playing there years ago. I think they played AEK Athens on a qualifier. It was a great atmosphere. So we could have maybe looked at that, but I understand you've got to have committed to like the UEFA, so you're going to play your games here. So we'll see. We just have to hope for the best, I'm afraid.
Just Scotty, what would your expectations be for Europe in general this season? What would be acceptable or a success for you?
What's acceptable would be getting past the first qualifying round, getting the £5 million and then taking Europa League football. To me, that's acceptable. I think we've backed ourselves into a corner with the situation at the club. Thought that statement again today. I don't really want to touch upon it too much, but it was vague. It was half-hearted, half-arsed. It was awful. Every word in it was just felt empty to me. Anyway, moving on for that. Ibrox brings it's kind of, it reminds me of a bigger time castle, Thommo. It's you're on top of the players. Yeah. It's and then you compare it to Hampden. Hampden was built for like Commonwealth or Olympic Games or something originally, was it not? Because it had the old running track and that on it and whatever. I mean, that's a massive factor, and it's not our fault as fans, but it's our club's fault. The club's not done anything to get us back on side. And we spoke about synergy. I know I'm going off on a point here, but we spoke about synergy that Clermont built between the club, the fans and the players to bring us all back as one. And a couple of daft decisions made by board and construction workers. I don't care who's at fault, but shouldn't have happened at the end of the day. Like, it's substandard, and we're not a substandard club. We're supposed to be the benchmark, and we're not just now. We're pretty much a laughingstock because of people that's running it, to be brutally honest with you. In terms of Europe, I would probably be... This is where I think we need to dim our expectations as fans a bit, because I think there could be an overcry on the manager if we don't make a Champions League. If we don't make a Champions League, then it's almost like a snowball effect. It goes on to players. Players take the problems onto the park. If mood's bad within a club, then it can have a long-lasting effect on your season. We've seen it under Michael Beale last season. The criticism he got for not making the Champions League, criticism Steven Gerrard got for not beating Malmo. It's massive, but I think as a support, we need to dim our expectations on this one, because if we don't, then it could really have a bad effect on the upcoming season, to be honest with you, Thommo. Yeah. That to me, if we don't achieve that playoff round in the Europa League, then there's something to worry about. But to me, I mean, apart from money in the Champions League, do you really think we're going to be competitive in it? Like, no. Do you know where I'm coming from? Like, you only want it for money. Do you know what I mean? Like,
I mean, that's what one of my points was going to be, Scotty. I'll come to Gary on that. I mean, over the last few years, we have done well in Europe, apart from obviously that one Champions League campaign we had where, you know, we got battered, no two ways about it. But over the last sort of 5 years or so, we have done really well in Europe. Do you think, Gary, it's time that we maybe start putting our eggs in the basket of domestic football and looking more at that than maybe having a run in Europe? Because from my point of view, the only team who's benefited from us doing well in Europe is Celtic. It's certainly not been us. So I mean, what's your take on that, Gary? Or do you think we have to do well in all competitions?
I think there's a challenge here. You know, the two things are intertwined. They're not, one isn't the other. So just picking up on the point Scotty made, Champions League qualification gets us money. Money gets us better players. Better players gives us a better chance to win the league. Do you know, that's fundamentally it. Do you know, I think you need, so it's not always just about how the progress in Champions League occurs. The money that you'll get from there will potentially buy one or two players towards the end of the window that might swing that difference in terms of the league. So I think you've got to be aiming for the Champions League. The new format in terms of how it works, this whole, if it's something we can try and explain it as we go through this tonight, but the top 8 go through, and is it 9th to 24th or in some sort of playoff? So how many points is going to get you into that playoff rounds? There's no safety net with the Europa League. The gulf in finances is vast, though. So I suppose that the question is, do you see the money that the Champions League brings and being a middle of the road at best team there, potentially helping you win the league, etc., goes with it, more relevant than being a competitive team in the Europa League, and arguably an even more competitive team in the Conference League? If it's all about winning the competition, I was thinking this earlier on, if it's about winning the competition, if you're far behind the league, you'd be better to drop all the way back and finish third than have a go at the Conference League the following year. You wanted success in a trophy. But if you're looking to gain prestige, money, glamour, and all the stuff that goes with it, you have to strive for the Champions League. You might not be successful, and I think it's what he said. Gio's big failing 3 years ago, was to get battered repeatedly in the Champions League, and it destroyed confidence, destroyed fitness, lots of injuries and all the stuff that went with it, and he never recovered. But they bring in money that allowed us to probably invest the following year that went potentially wasted in some ways.
Aye.
Yeah, I mean, again, Stevie, Gary's made a great point there that I was going to say. When we did get into the Champions League last, we got battered by superior teams, really good teams. Can't deny that, and that killed the confidence of the players. So quite rightly, Gary said we brought in the money, but what did we do with it? Is it worth getting into the Champions League? Taking these batterings for money that's going to be pretty much squandered.
To me, it's a no-brainer. Like, we need to make the Champions League. Like, Celtic have monopolised Scottish football for the last 10, 12 years, and they've had that guaranteed stream of income, and they've built it up. And every year that we're not in the Champions League, and they are, that gap financially widens. Like, I get what you're saying about like be competitive in Europa League. I've enjoyed it, but we're talking about the bottom line here, and the bottom line is they're getting further away from us. So we need to stop that. We need to arrest that straight away. So we need to be in the Champions League. Honestly, I kind of agree with Scott about like if we get to the next round and we go there, that's maybe realistic because we've not backed the manager. We've signed a few really decent looking young players for abroad. They've got a lot of potential, but we're not signing match winners that are proven. We're not signing Shankland, or players of that standard. If those guys were coming in, then I'd say, right, we need to get the Champions League. So I think Clement's actually gotten a bit more almost leeway with the situation that he's facing off the field. I think he will get more time. If it doesn't go right in Europe, well, we can say, well, he's not really been back yet. This might change, like with the transfer window going to open in Saudi in a couple of weeks or a few days. If players go out, we'll sell players, then yeah, maybe at that point we'll actually buy. But I think that's what we're waiting on, is player sales before we invest. But sorry, to get back to your point, yeah, I would take a few thumpings in the Champions League just to ensure that money's coming to the club because we absolutely need it. We need that investment, top to bottom, as you can see. So yeah, I would. I don't want to get beat 7-1 again. I don't want to see that ever again. But we're talking about the bottom line, and Rangers need that finance without a shadow of a doubt.
Thommo, sorry, you just got.
Just quickly, Stevie. I think what we're guilty of as a support is because we're not used to making the Champions League anyway. We're not used to winning the league. We're forgetting what Rangers standards are really about. You know what I mean? We're forgetting that should be the bare minimum expectation to make the Champions League. But our club's been run that badly.
Yeah.
That we're beginning. Well, I'm not saying we're beginning to accept it, but if it's not being run with standards at the top, then that's just going to dribble down through a club. You know what I mean? Gary, sorry, what you go say?
No, I was just going to say, I suppose, to go back to the money point, and it probably links into other things as well. I mean, the money is one aspect, pure cash, but the other part is the whole turnover thing and the financial fair play, whatever it's called these days. But that one of the reasons we have to buy Diamonde and a loan to buy, and Cortez and loan to buy is because the threshold of turnover. If you generate 80, 90 million through the Champions League, that gives you a higher threshold to buy, allows you to spend more, allows you greater wages, and it in turn brings you better players fundamentally. So I think there is. Yes, there's a football aspect which is scary at times, thinking we'll be up against Liverpool and getting battered. But from a business point of view, I think Stevie says there's no brainer. You want to reach the Champions League from that business perspective, and I think that's probably the bit that we struggle with as fans. We're no longer competitive at that. We're not going to win a Champions League. So, and as a Rangers fan, Scott says you want to be competitive. So do you go for the Europa League where you can be competitive? And I think that's the challenge. That balance between what do you want to achieve versus what you need to achieve in terms of the business side.
I mean, that's spot on. When you look at, like we touched on Fenerbahce, like they're a team that are trying to break into the Champions League and they've got clout, you know, and we're nowhere near that level of like finance. So, you know, if we could make it, it'd be fantastic for the club.
Yeah. Just before I go on to my next point, there was a comment that came up there from KW asking about how long the transformation is going to take. I'm guessing you're talking about the stadium there, KW, but if you just want to reply, and we can have a little discussion on that in a minute. I say I'm assuming it is a stadium you're talking about, but it could be the side, the team, you know, what players we're signing. But just going back to that, Scott, about the money. Is it time for the board to have a gamble, you know, back the manager, get players in who's going to take us and get us into the Champions League and get all of those millions? Or do you think it's right that they sit on their hands a little bit and say, right, we're not risking any future here. You know, 2012 still raw in all of our minds, but do you think it's time that the board maybe say, here you go, here's a few million for someone that you want?
I think if we can do that within FFP, I think then we've got to. Because, I mean, you're looking at things that are... I don't really like speaking about Celtic on a Rangers pod, right? But see, if you're looking at what's going on across the city, they're not really up to much just now. We've done more business than them. In the last season, they were there for the taking, and I actually thought if they get us Champions League money and they would get rid of Peter Lawwell's son, they're taking the recruitment a different direction. Rodgers wants to change the transfer strategy at Celtic. I thought they're going to go out and spend like big money. Do you know what I mean? But they're not. They've not spent any big money so far. So it all still ajar for us. So I would say, we've done it in the 55 season, and you ended up selling guys like Patterson and stuff eventually. Like, that's supposed to be how this trading model's apparently working. But I do think we're in a position where it's one in, one out, and I don't think there's any investment at the club to be able to put any money into players just now, Thommo. And it's sad because see, if you look at, I've said this quite a few nights now, if you look at Clement come in, he's faced shit show after shit show. Like, one disaster after the next. It's not good enough. And that's stuff that's out with the board's control. It's injuries, it's circumstances. But it's circumstances that we're not giving him the tools to do his job just now. Do you know what I mean? So if we've actually got a proper manager in, then back him. Gave him the backing you gave Pedro Caixinha, Michael Beale, Graham Murray even get backed. Clement's not had it. Do you know what I mean? $4.5 million on Diamonde is the only transfer fee he's paid so far, which is not great, to be brutally honest. Do you know what I mean? And I do think once Laverth and Dessers and stuff go, there will be incomings, but it shouldn't need to get to that.
No, I mean,
the mismanagement that's happened before, unfortunately. You're right, he's a great man. I really like him, but his hands are tied, which is why I think he'll get more leeway than maybe what previous managers would have got this season.
I mean, as Scott said there, managers who haven't had the pedigree of Clement have been backed, and you know, I can't remember how much Caixinha spent, but it was a good few million. And again, Michael Beale last summer spent how many millions on Lammers, Danilo, Dessers. Dessers, you could argue, has been a success of sorts, but Danilo unfortunately injured. Lammers probably going to have a loss on him. And just going back to what KW said there, he was talking about the stadium. There's no real date on that, KW, so we can't really give you an answer, unfortunately. There was talk of it was 5 games that we were going to be using Hampden for. There's been rumours that it could be October, November. Unfortunately, there's no clear word from the club, so we can't give you definitive answer on that one, mate. I know Scott's got some strong feelings on it, but you heard anything, Scott, or is that pretty accurate? What I've replied to him?
No, you're completely right, Tom. I've not heard nothing, but I've just got a statement in front of me, and the kind of small section off it says, "Well, the ongoing delay means that the club is unable to fix a date for our return to Ibrox. We anticipate that this will be clear upon delivery of the necessary materials to Glasgow." So let's put that into perspective, right, and get back to Rangers standards for a wee minute. We're talking about standards, and they can't arrange whatever's went on between them and this building firm to get some. They don't know when materials are arriving at Ibrox. Come on, man. Grow a set and get your heads out of sand and get us fixed, Rangers. That's nothing. That's absolutely appalling. I can't believe they've even released that today. We don't know. We can't tell you nothing. all they've told us is there's a statement within a statement. Do you know what I mean? We'll give you a personal update at the end of July. Aye. Cheers, John. No problem, pal.
Thommo, can I make a comment on that? It's something I was thinking about earlier on. I suppose one of the things for me, do you know, in any construction project, you should be looking at the risks, and the risks of either of things not meeting the time scale. So there was this 10-12 week window to do it. We went from the last home game to the first home game, and if you're a board and then involved in that, you're looking at the risks involved with weather. Scottish summer, it's not been great. Could have delayed project. The materials, as Scotty says, or labour, the company. I'm a little bit surprised that there was no risk factored in, and those discussions. We knew for months this was going to happen. The work was going to get done. So why was a contingency plan not set in place months ago and communicated to supporters saying, Joe, it could be the case that work isn't completed by the start of the season. If that is the case, X will happen. That would have been the more sensible business approach to me. I've been a little bit bemused as to why we took a gamble on something being done within 10 weeks and it's went wrong.
As I say, it's a little bit off of our topic tonight, but it is obviously very, very relevant, especially with a statement coming out today. But Stevie, from my understanding, it wasn't even work if it was, essential, needing doing. It was to increase the capacity by a few hundred, was it? Maybe 1,000. And as Gary rightly points out, you have contingencies. I mean, we sat here on this pod last season talking about Dundee and having their games called off, and we're in the same position. I mean, what's your thoughts on that going forward?
You need to watch my language here, but I mean, it really has been shambolic. Kind of well covered by Gary and Scotty. They're just, where was the plan? I mean, we're asking how is this going so wrong? Like, seriously, it's not a better idea to have the materials in place before you actually start the work. Get it ahead of time almost. They knew it was happening, like you say, so there's plenty of time to plan for it. It's just shambolic. I mean, it's really Mickey Mouse stuff. It's almost ironic. It's like we finally appoint a decent manager. We've got Coppin, director of football. It's like there's so much positivity, stuff that they're really looking forward to, and it just falls to pieces. Like in this other part of the club, it's like we know how it just properly ran at the same time, and now it's impacting the manager and the squad, and obviously the start of the season is so important. It's not just the European games. It's like the domestic season can be really for the first month of the season. This is how it's going to go, and if it goes wrong, like you say, the pressure is immense. I still hope Clermont gets the time, but the press are the press, and they're going to obviously latch onto whatever. So yeah, it's just a really poor situation that we find ourselves in, unfortunately. But you never know. We might get a few practice games at Hampden and actually win a cup final at the back of this. You never know.
Maybe it's over right time to be selling Scott Wright. Keep a hold of him for when at Hampden. We'll come on to Clermont there, Gary. Started off with lots of positivity, lots of good comments. Things were looking bright. Then we sort of fell away in the league. Well, we imploded really. Then we lost the Scottish Cup final, which ended our season on a bit of a dampener. Do you think he's going to get the time at the start of the season? I mean, we can't keep just firing managers every October, November if we've had a poor start to the season. But as Stevie and some comments have made out, he's basically working with one, if not two hands behind his back. Do you see him getting the time to make an impact?
There's probably two answers to that, Tom. Do I think he should get the time? Which is probably yes. Do I think he will get the time? The answer would be no. Do you know, I think if I remember rightly, at the end of the season, there was lots of discussions and people talking to pods and all that stuff that goes with it about let's rebuild, let's bring in young players, let's start. If it takes 2 to 3 years, so be it. We're now nearing the start of the season and we're starting to get very fraught about we need to be winning the league again, we need to do this and so forth. So I don't really think that time exists. I think in an ideal world it would make sense, but the reality is that if he goes in, loses his Champions League qualifiers, loses against Celtic in the first game, it's still playing, the football is still relatively, what's the word, best way to put it, basic in terms of style. The fans will turn pretty quickly, I think. I don't think that time exists without success, simply.
Yeah. Same at you, Stevie. What's your thoughts? I mean, I can see you're a fan of Clement. But do you think he's going to get the time to do what he feels is necessary?
He's got to, and at the end of the day, like this is his pre-season, so this might make a huge difference because he inherited Michael Beale's pre-season last season, and it was another shambles. Let's be honest. I mean, the players dropping left, right, centre. I mean, I don't think Tav was fit for the first 3 months of the season. It was so poor, injuries, everything else. So hopefully he's doing it right. He's got his team in place with him. It's going to be a great pre-season. Always thought Gerrard's pre-season were excellent. He really worked them. So hopefully that's what's happening right now. They're getting a great grounding. And to me, he's got to get time because, like you've said, we can't just get rid of a manager every October with a bad start to the season, and especially now with the current situation, they need to give him time. They've pinpointed these like young players. They've got the guys that they wanted, the promised talents. So let them work with them. I think if we were to get rid of him, who's taking her? Like seriously, who would probably have to go from the Scotland? Like McInnes. I like Derek McInnes. He's a great manager in Scotland, but we've got a guy who's got real pedigree. He's got a good director of football. He's got his staff. We'll let him work with the players. Give him the full season. I think it's the least he deserves. I understand it'll be huge pressure if we were to go to the Champions League and lose that first Old Firm game, but that's necessarily not going to happen. We have to hope for the best in that regard, but give him his due, give him his time, let him have his pre-season and work with the players that he has brought in so far. He needs more backing, but give the guy a chance.
Do you think, Scotty, it's a good sign that the board are backing him in a way and that he is bringing in his own backroom staff? We've had a couple of coaches and scouts come into the club over the last couple of weeks that are obviously Clement's recommendations and people he wants. So in that side of things, it looks like he is being backed. So that's got to be a good sign, surely, that he's here for a bit of a long haul. You're on mute, pal.
Oh, I've not done that in a wee while. I definitely, but the only thing is, if is the medical department being revamped yet? Like, I know there's scouts and stuff being added, and he's got a transition coach. That's fair play to club, but it's the medical department that needs a bit of jiggery pokery. So whether it might have happened behind the scenes, I've not got a clue.
Did we not bring in the guy for Brighton last season? I'm sure we got Brighton's something to do with physio sports nights. Aye.
Was that no? I was some kind of analyst or something. Was it no? I've not got a scoop. I know who you're talking about though, Stevie. In terms of the pressure on Clement, I think this could potentially work in his favour if it doesn't make Champions League, because the blame will go towards the board and not the manager, because it's a mitigating circumstance that we're not playing at Hotham Ground. The only reason I see it changing is if we don't make a Champions League, it gets beat well and truly, like beat in the first Old Firm game, and there's no brand of fit bar, put out the League Cup, let's see if it's an absolute disaster, then I think the fans will maybe start calling for him. But you know what? We shouldn't expect that to happen. We should be expecting to build on a performance against Celtic in the league in the Scottish Cup final. We should be expecting to go there and get a result. We should be expecting to get a good start of the season domestically, because that's Cummont's job at the end of the day. Champions League is a Champions League. It's that's a bit different. Like, that's a completely different kettle of fish. But domestically, he needs to be spot on. Hampden can't be an excuse for domestic football. Not getting that figure on Thommo. So that would be kind of my Tottenham's worth. As long as we see progress, we'll be happy.
Yeah.
And Gary, when it comes to European football, what would you say is our level? Would you say it's Europa League, or do you think it's even Conference League now? Because Europa League this season just gone, there were some good teams there. Liverpool, Atalanta, Bayer Leverkusen. What do you see as our level now in European football?
It depends what we're looking at. If we're looking at our level as in competing to win it or competing to reach the latter stages, I think you would say the Conference League has teams that are comparable to us. Now, we played Olympiacos, their pre-season friendly. It's not very well last year, but that was a comparable level. A lot of the teams that made it through to the latter stages were on that level. So if you're looking at it purely as it is, it's the third tier competition, it'd be the one that you'd be saying that would be the most likely to compete in. I think the one that gives the fans the prestige, the glamour, probably the excitement, and the chance to see teams and players that why we watch football is the Champions League, and I suppose that's the trade-off. And for me, it's always going to be about aiming as high as you possibly can, and then the difficulty this season is you don't have Europa League safety net, and that makes it slightly more tricky, doesn't it? In previous years, finishing third got you into Europa League. Now, if you don't make it, the 25th, 24th or whatever it is, you're straight out, and that's it, nothing from Christmas onwards.
Yeah. I mean, same to you, Stevie. What do you see our level at in Europe?
I think we're a decent Europa League team. We've kind of proven that over the last 4 or 5 years. It's really some great nights at Ibrox. But that standard, I think, is pretty much where we are. It's not a slight on the team, but the rest of Europe. Sorry to bring it back to finance, but all the leagues, they're progressing, they're bringing in their coin all the time, whereas we're standing still. We're going backwards, and if you're standing still in football, you are going backwards. So yeah, I kind of don't really go too much on the board, but we're sitting here chatting about these qualifiers. If they gave Hearts £3 or £4 million in January for Shankland, wouldn't be playing these games. Would have won the league, probably the cup as well. So it kind of goes back on them again.
And Scotty, what's your, let's say, expectations? You've said before about getting through the first qualifying round. If we were to actually get to the Champions League, what would that mean to you in terms of football-wise? Take the finances out of it. How would you see us progressing there?
Well, the minimum expectation is put a bit of pride back into a badge and compete into it. That's all you want to see is your team competing. Don't want to see them getting in and getting spanked the way we did the last time we were. But then, if you look at the supposed best team in Scotland just now, champions, they're not that good in Europe either. Do you know what I mean? That Champions League isn't at their level. So I think in terms of looking at Scottish football as a whole, the likes of Aberdeen, Hibs, Hearts, whoever it is that gets in, need to pull their weight to get a coefficient up as well. We can't just keep relying on Rangers every season because Rangers are falling into Europa League and that's their level and they win a couple of matches. Celtic get beat every time they get in. The Champions League doesn't help the coefficient. So it's like everybody, it's got to be a collective effort to improve the level. It's not just about accepting Europa League football and thinking that's a bad thing for Rangers, because I think that's Rangers and Celtic's level. I think that's the general acceptance with the finances and amongst the Scottish game. Nobody's rich. Nobody's getting out spending 10, 15 million in a player for the English Championship. We should, if we get into the Champions League, I expect us to compete, to give teams a game, and pick up a few points. Do you know what I mean? 3 or 4 points, get a win on board, get a bit of pride back in the badge again. I don't really want to sit here sounding as if I'm pure pessimistic all night and say like, Europa League's well level. It is well level, but we should be looking to hit a wee bit higher every now and again. If we get into Champions League, we should be going to make a right fist at it and just see what we get. You know what I mean? It's I don't know.
Gary mentioned it before. Like Betis last season was one of the best away performances I've seen Rangers play in Europe. So they're capable, and Betis are a class team. So just have a go. Don't just expect to get beat when you turn up. I know that's pretty much what happens to the other mob. Like you say, they're dreadful in Europe. Have been for years.
Right.
As are the rest of Scottish football. I mean, Rangers are like Scotland in Europe for the last 6 or 7 years. But yeah, if we make it, have a go. Try and actually win some points.
So, and I can't remember who qualified last year in the other groups, but Copenhagen and teams, there's teams that are comparable to us. They're in the Champions League, finishing third, getting into the next round. And that, so we should always, I suppose, it's determine what success is for us in the Champions League. Is it reaching the playoff round? Is it finishing at that stage versus reaching the semi-final of Europa League? For me, reaching that playoff round would be a more successful season than maybe the quarterfinals of the Europa League.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think you're being pessimistic, Scott. I think you're being a realist. The way football is nowadays, those teams from the top 5 leagues, as it were, are just pulling away from everyone else. It's a different level. You've pretty much got them, and then you've got tiers underneath. You know, the likes of Real Madrid, you just go out and sign Mbappe. It's even though they're hundreds of millions in debt. Barcelona, $1 billion in debt. You seem to just still be able to go out and sign these players, but it's frustrating. But as you say, we've pretty much held up the coefficient for the last 4 or 5 years, and I think after this season, our years start dropping off. So I think we lose one of our Champions League places after this season. So that makes it even more important that we win the league this year.
Right.
We had a bit of a closed-door friendly the other day against Standard Liège, drew 0-0, and we've got our first real friendly on Saturday against Ajax. So I'll just before we wrap up, Gary, what are you expecting to see from the friendly on Saturday? Just some minutes in the legs, or would you like to start seeing some style of play that Clement is bringing in?
I think, I've only looked briefly at yesterday's friendly, but I think it was a training game, wasn't it? With very little at stake in it and nothing really of note to watch. I don't expect Ajax or most of the other ones to be massively different. I suppose the interesting thing that people have is who's playing, who's not playing, and start reading into these things as to what that means for the future and speculating on that, which I suppose is part of the thing. So it'd be interesting to see who plays against Ajax. It'll be interesting to see once Clement spoke over the next couple of days whether there's injuries keeping some of those players out, and as we start to look at what the team might look like going forward. But still, we're a month away. There's going to be another 3 or 4 or 5 new signings, 3 or 4 or 5 new players going out. It's not going to tell us an awful lot at this stage, I wouldn't have thought, other than there's a style of play forming. And maybe looking at tactical. I think you had a tactical one last night. Maybe we're looking more at 4-3-3 rather than 4-2-3-1s and all that stuff. But it's not going to give us a real definition of how the team's going to look come August to whatever date it may be.
And Stevie's saying to you expecting much from this, or just minutes in the legs for players?
Aye, definitely. Just work them really hard. Get your fitness up. Gary mentioned about the formations. I think that now's the time, if you want to try a couple of different things. Because obviously we've got different tests, so yeah, try a couple of different formations. Why not? We've been playing the 4-3-2-1 forever, so yeah, I'd definitely like to see a wee bit of kind of experimentation, because this is the time to do it. It's not when the league starts. It's like get it practiced before the real game starts. So aye, fitness and formations for me.
And Scotty, do you think this is going to start telling us that who's going to be in, who's going to be out, who's captain at the weekend, or do you think it's going to be too early to tell those, those sort of answers?
I think Suter had a armband in the first half and Goldson had it in the second half, didn't he?
Mm-hmm.
Tav was nowhere to be seen. I don't know where Tav was, if he was in the sidelines or wherever. I don't know. I know I know Cantwell wasn't in the squad either. Don't know. All I want to see is a style of play for come on. See if I see a style of play for come on, I think everybody will kind of start to pull together again in terms of, right, we know what the manager's doing, we know what he's trying. He's got a style of play. He's got some of his own players in. I think the transfer window is going to kind of trickle towards the end now, and we're going to be working right up until then. I think if Big Cyril leaves, then that's a bit of money we'll go out and spend it. I think that's his budget. I think that's pretty much what we're waiting on. We're waiting on this first decent fee to come in, Thommo, and then you might start to see things take shape a wee bit better. Pre-season, I just want it to be better than the last pre-season because I always want Rangers to be better. And the last pre-season was kind of raising alarm bells for us all, wasn't it? Because we've only really seen a style of play. Sam Lammers was our best player. Looked phenomenal. It actually did really look phenomenal last pre-season. I want to see a team on the park that's playing for each other, and I want to see either the ball's getting played in the deck or we're going to play fast rock and roll football. I'm not caring what it is. I just want to see where we're going.
Can I just add one thing? Just Cortes. I can't wait to see Cortes again. Only played like 4 or 5 games when he came in, and I thought it looked brilliant. So I'm really excited to see him. He's going to be a star this season, I think.
Aye.
Yeah, I say hopefully he stays fit, and I agree with you, Stevie. I thought he looked excellent when in the games he played. Certainly got a lot of potential, and we spoke about it on pods towards the end of last season. That was really when our form really started to dip when he went out, because we seemed to lose that balance on that left side without him or Sima playing. So it's been a good discussion tonight about European expectations, upcoming European games. So just before we wrap up, Gary, any final thoughts from yourself, pal?
Not about the European, actually. Funny enough, I was thinking about the friendlies, and I suppose there's a lot of speculation, to have been one of them. And if I remember rightly, he played in every single pre-season game, every minute of every pre-season game last year, then played every single game bar one all season, and then come the last 10 games he was spent completely. So you wonder whether there might actually be a bit more sensible sports science and loading and when players play and all the sort of stuff that goes with it. Or it could be totally wrong, it could be actually his weight Saudi, or it could be carrying an injury. Nobody knows at this point. I suppose that's where we're at a lot of these things, and we're all speculating about the different scenarios around who's doing what. So I think that will be interesting over the next couple of weeks, is to see as and what starts to happen with some of the players more than anything else.
Well done there, Gary. I think you covered every single base that there is to cover there, mate. Fair play.
Variables, I've seen variables on the chat. Was that something to do with that?
It's the buzzword.
That's it. Variables. Stevie, any final words and goodbyes from yourself, mate?
No, thanks again for having me. Thanks to everybody who's been watching. Hopefully we got a decent European run this season in the Champions League. Get through these qualifiers. It's going to be tough games, I say, but with the backing of the fans, we've always got a chance.
Yeah, thank you for coming on, Stevie. I say always a pleasure. And Scotty, final thoughts and goodbyes from yourself, pal.
Just a wee welcome to all the new subscribers we've had today. Obviously, we've got the competition out on Twitter, which is for, I think, if you retweet and comment and subscribe to the YouTube channel, you've got a chance of winning a home top. So welcome to all the new subscribers and viewers. Tomorrow we've got Rangers news with Billy, Derek, and Cammy. Think that's going to be around 12. It'll be around midday. We'll schedule a pod, so make sure you turn your notifications on so that you know when it's going to be. That'll be live. And then tomorrow night it's me, Doug, and Willie Urban for RFC youth updates, and we're going to look at the youth players in pre-season. Your Robbie Fraser's, Finlay Curtis is he's gained a wee bit of traction because he's been noticed that he's there. So we'll ask Willie about different players and see if he can see any of them kind of making a breakthrough. We'll touch upon Ross McCausland. There's plenty of stuff coming up, so please like, share, subscribe. And in terms of me, I just want my club operating back to the standard it should be. Thanks for hosting, Thommo.
No, not a problem, Scott. As I say, it's always a pleasure being on. And I'll just echo what Scott has said. Gaining number of subscribers now, so thank you very much for everyone taking the time to subscribe, to watch the pod and getting involved in the in the comments. It's absolutely brilliant to see. And like Scott, we all just want to see a well-run Rangers and a successful Rangers. And that's what we're here for, to talk about the good and the bad. So, like I say, any different opinions are more than welcome in the comments. So please like and share, let your friends know about us. And I'll wrap up now. And if everyone remembers, every night is a Rangers Journal night. Good night.